Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at New York Zoo. This is a 1 to 5 player tile placement rondel abstract strategy game where you take the role of zoo developers. You will be placing tiles and animals in your zoo, trying to become the best zoo developer. How do you become the best developer and win the game? By being the first player to completely fill in your zoo. Now that we know what the winning condition is, let's take a look at the components, setup, and how gameplay works in New York Zoo. Now let's look at the components. You have zoo boards. These are double-sided. In the bottom left corner will indicate which boards are for which number of players. In the bottom right corner is where this player will go in turn order. At the top of the zoo board, on the left and right top of the zoo board, you will see 2 animals. These will be the starting animals in your houses. Across the top, it is depicted how much the elephant can move, what to do when breeding occurs, and the basic rules for placing animals. Next, we have your action strip, enclosure tiles. These come in different shades of green. The lighter the shade, the less number of squares. So the lightest green has 4 squares, next is 5, then 6, and the darkest green is 7. Attraction tiles. These come from 1 to 8 squares. Animals, you have the elephant or the action marker, and then you have tree kangaroos, Arctic foxes, flamingos, penguins, and meerkats. Below the animals, you have animal tiles. These are used when the animals run out. Question mark token. This is to help signal where you took the tile from while you're trying to place it on your zoo board. Range markers. These are for the solo game. And then finally, your rule book. Now let's take a look at the setup. We're going to be setting this up for a 3-player game which takes 5 steps. Step 1, choose a starting player and get your zoo board. You will choose a first player and then collect the zoo boards with the corresponding number of players in the bottom left. Then in turn order, get the board with your turn order number in the bottom right, and then place the board in the middle of your player area. Step 2, place the action strip and elephant. You'll spread the action strip in the middle of the play area, and then place the elephant on the starting space or red dot. Step 3, place animals and get starting animals. You'll place the animals in the removable tray and place the tray next to the play area within reach of all the players. Players will then collect one of each of their matching animals from the top left and top right of their zoo board and place them into their houses. Step 4, sort and place attractions. You'll sort the attraction tiles by size and place them next to the play area. Step 5, separate, shuffle, and place enclosure tiles. You'll sort the enclosure tiles by color or number of squares, shuffle each type, and then place them randomly from lightest to darkest, matching the spaces on the action strip. So first you will place the lightest on the 8 middle sections, and then the next darker shade would go on all of the spaces, placing them on top of the lighter shade when necessary, and so on. Each location should have a stack of 3 with the darkest on top. Also place the question mark token near the play area. Now let's look at the gameplay. A game consists of a number of player turns until a player completely covers the zoo board. A player turn consists of at most 3 phases: moving the elephant, taking a main action, and animal breeding. Now let's look at each phase in detail. Phase 1, move the elephant. You'll move the elephant up to a number of spaces around the action strip based on the number of players. In a 2 or 4 player game, you can move it up to 4, and in a 3 or 5 player game, you can move it up to 3. Spaces that you are moving it are either enclosure tiles or blue animal spaces. Empty enclosure spots are skipped when moving the elephant. Once you've moved the elephant, we go to phase 2, the main action. Based on where you place the elephant, you would gain the top enclosure tile or the animals depicted. When placing an enclosure tile, they do not have to be next to each other, but you must place 1 to 2 animals on the tile. These can be from houses or other enclosures as long as it leaves 1 animal behind in the previous enclosure. Also keep in mind that you cannot take 2 from the same enclosure. When acquiring animals, you gain 1 or both animals, placing them on your zoo board. You can place them onto enclosures with the same animals. You can place them into houses or onto empty enclosures. When you place an animal in an enclosure, you can add 1 to that same tile from a house, but keep in mind you can only place 2 in an enclosure during a turn. If you complete an enclosure, filling completely with that animal, you would clear the tile, return the animals to the supply, keeping 1 in a house if there is a free house on your zoo board, and then gain an attraction tile of your choice to place on your zoo board. Keep in mind that if this happened during breeding, then the attractions would be taken in turn order, starting with the current player's turn. Once you place the tile or animals, we move to phase 3, animal breeding. If the elephant crossed an animal breeding line, an animal breeding occurs. For each enclosure where you have 2 or more of that animal, you get to place 1 of those animals from the supply, and this can take place on up to 2 different enclosures. If multiple players complete enclosures because of animal breeding, selection of attraction tiles happen in turn order starting with the current player. For a 2 or 3 player game, bonus breeding happens. This is indicated on the top of your zoo board. This takes place during animal breeding, where another enclosure of your choice breeds as long as at least 2 animals exist on the enclosure. Then it would become the next player's turn, and player turns will continue until a player completely fills in their zoo board, making them the best zoo developer and wins New York Zoo.